The Yankees world is ending. We tell you who to draft and who not to. We got breaking news, Will. First pitch is next, bud. What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 72 of Bringing the Heat. My name's Cody Pyatt, and with me, as always, the four-seam fastball co-host, Will Sism. Brother man, midweek record, how you doing?
Doing good, man. It is middle of the week, but spring training is in high gear, and dude, we got Padres Dodgers in
7 days.
Let's call it just under a week. Yeah. So baseball is literally right around the corner, and I couldn't be more excited. And I'll tell you what, this is going to be a fun episode. We haven't quite done this exactly before, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
No doubt, man. I'll let everybody in on what it is. We got a little bit of news, obviously some good news, some bad news, some breaking news just broke before we sat down, which is about how it goes. It's either right before we sit down after I've done all the paperwork, or directly after I submit it to be sent out to you guys listening. So that's just podcast timing. And then we do something I'm super excited about. Players to target and avoid. We have it kind of different sections, like every 5 rounds, ADP. 1 through 60, and then 61 through 120. So it's going to be rounds 1 through 5, 6 through 10, 11 through 15, 16 through 20. And we're going to tell you one player we target, one player to avoid. And so you guys, when you listen to this, take some notes and then maybe think about that. Let us know what you're thinking, because I'd be curious. But before we dive into any of that, Will, let's dive into the breaking news that happened, moments ago, man. Padres finalizing a deal to acquire Cease from the White Sox. I don't know that we have everything coming back quite yet, but what I'm seeing is Drew Thorpe, who was traded in the Soto deal, and then a right-hander, and we were talking about how to say the name, Jerio Iriarte. I don't know, but it's the number 5 and number 8 prospect for the Padres going to the White Sox in return for Dylan Cease. We all know had a great year in 22, runner up in the Cy Young, and then had a year in 23 he'd like to forget about. But it strengthens the rotation, man. What do you think?
You know what's really interesting? I'll be honest. When you actually texted me this before I even saw it, and when you said Cease to the Padres, I thought about it for a second, and I was like, man, I did not have this on my bingo card.
Yeah.
And so the more I thought about it, I'll be honest, the more puzzled I got. But I tell you what, here's just kind of my raw thoughts on it. Number one, the first thing that came to my mind is, if you're the Padres and you were, going to end up making a move for a guy like Dylan Cease, why not just sign Blake Snell? Because it feels like Blake Snell is maybe a little bit better version of Dylan Cease. At least he was last year, kind of a left-handed version of Dylan Cease, if you will.
Yeah.
A guy that has won 2 Cy Youngs, though. Dylan Cease has a runner-up. But, I think the biggest thing, though, is, there's the recency bias when you compare those two guys. Blake Snell won the Cy Young. Yeah. And as you mentioned, Dylan Cease was awful.
Yeah.
And kind of for me, the most practical part of this when I thought about it, though, is I was like, well, if you're going to give up these pretty highly regarded prospects, you could have avoided that and just re-signed Snell. So that was kind of my initial thoughts on it. As far as the White Sox go, it was very obvious that they were going to try to move Cease and try to get optimal value as much as possible. It sounded like they were holding out for a king's ransom, but I think, honestly, this is probably about as good as it was going to get. And so yeah, here we are. The White Sox are clearly in kind of teardown mode, what it feels like to me at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And the Padres, who knows? Let's see if they can revitalize a guy like Cease, and let's see if this helps them in the NL West race this year.
Yeah. Dude, I like everything you said. A couple things I do want to reiterate. There might be more players in this deal, but it's so early on. So it feels pretty light. There might be some more guys there. When you get to this point, we're going to talk about in a second, Garrett Cole having some elbow issues, and what does that mean for the Yankees? This guy was somebody they penciled in like real light pencil. Okay, easy to erase, but people are like cease to the Yankees. I imagine if you're a GM for the White Sox, you're like, okay, I just want to go get my prospect that I like more. I know the name kicking around Yankee land was that Spencer Jones, that behemoth man who makes Judge look kind of small. I don't know if you've seen pictures of him. He's unbelievable. Yeah, I don't know if they liked Thorpe more, or maybe Yankees weren't going to give him everything that they were asking for. My thing with what you texted me and what you were talking about with signing Snell, I think the money might be the issue for the Padres. We've kind of seen it, as you know, they traded Soto. They're not going to have it. I mean, they'll have a chance to re-sign him, but it's not going to happen.
Right.
But if you have issues signing Blake Snell, you're going to have issues signing Dylan Cease when he hits free agency in a couple of years. And so that's where it gets weird for me. I think the short term is nice. Obviously, you have Darvish, you have Musgrove, and now this is a pretty nasty third. If he can get back to his form. I don't think he's going to be 2022 Dylan Cease, maybe ever again, but he can split the difference between the last 2 years. Yeah, my thing is you let some pretty solid pitchers walk out the door, and Blake Snell and Michael Wacha, Seth Lugo, two of those guys are pitching for Kansas City. I don't know. I wonder how much money is strapped in San Diego, and it's kind of an interesting move. And okay, here's a question for you, Will. Do you think? I mean, where's this put them? I mean, obviously it's Dodgers 1, and then 50 feet of crap, Moneyball. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
But then are you like San Diego now with this move, or are you still going Arizona at the 2?
I mean, here's the problem with projecting it is, like, what Cease are we getting?
That's true.
Is it going to be, a Dylan Cease that, doesn't exactly have to be 2022 version, but is he closer to that? If the answer is yes, then, hey, Padres have definitely a good shot of finishing second in the division, I would say, especially if that lineup starts to click a little bit, maybe more so than it did last year. But if we're getting Dylan Cease essentially from a year ago, this doesn't really move the needle at all. You basically just gave up some really highly regarded prospects for a guy who, can't find it. So, it's really hard for me to say at this point. I'm just kind of puzzled, honestly. I did not expect San Diego to be the player in this.
Yeah.
I have to believe that maybe ownership or the front office felt a little pressure, since everybody's talking about the Dodgers, and the rest of everybody in that division is talking about Arizona coming off of a World Series appearance. Maybe they wanted to make some kind of a splash.
Yeah.
I don't know, but we'll just have to see how this plays out. It's just almost impossible for me to predict how this moves the needle, but I don't know. Just honestly a puzzling move. Totally get it from the White Sox perspective, but I'm still trying to figure out what San Diego is really trying to do.
Yep, I'm with you, man. And it's tough with having question marks on their checkbook. Hey, let's move on to something that, listen, we're not Yankees guys, but we don't root for injuries on this show, man. Some Yankees pillars go down, and both these guys, this just hurts for baseball. Let's start with the one that we somewhat think maybe might be a little bit more optimistic. Aaron Judge, Sunday, caught on camera wincing after taking a swing. I think if I swung as hard as he did, I think I probably winced too. But he was taken out of the game. The Yankees captain hasn't swung a bat since, and it said he will not swing for the rest of the week. Judge came out and said he feels like he's going to be fine. Just trying to be precautious. He says he might have overdone it in the offseason, taking too many swings. This is a guy who's had oblique hip, and then, of course, last season had the toe. Pretty tough scenes there. The big one, though, is Garrett Cole. On Monday, we get the notification, pops up, says he's going for an MRI on his elbow, which is never good. He was complaining of difficulty bouncing back after starts. I'd read he'd only pitched 2 innings in spring training. So if I was a bigger Yankees fan, that might set the alarm bells off. Like, why aren't we seeing more of Garrett Cole? So we got a little bit of news this afternoon on this. It looks like he's going to be shut down 1 to 2 months. He's on his way to LA. I think he might be actually there now. I saw a video of him being heckled by some paparazzi. Not very nice. He didn't look very happy. Not a great time in Garrett Cole's life. P's and T's to him for sure. Yeah, so apparently it's looking like they're going to shut him down. He's going to go talk to this doctor, and in a month or two, it's going to ramp back up and see how it feels. This is a tough spot for the Yankees to be in. They're in this 1 year window with Soto. I think it was blue skies, walking on sunshine for the Yankees, and man, has it crashed down hard in the last 48 hours. What do you think on this, Will?
Yeah, definitely a storm cloud for sure. I mean, I'm not overly concerned at this point about Aaron Judge. He's been one of those guys over the last few years that, every so often something kind of crops up, and other than kind of that toe injury last year, which sidelined him for several weeks, like usually he's fairly bounces back fairly quickly on most of these type of things. So I'm not overly concerned about that at this point. But man, Garrett Cole, man, this doesn't sound great. I anytime that a pitcher of his caliber, they start talking elbow, man, I just very rarely is that a good thing. And and now that you're hearing him going to the specialist and talking about how he couldn't bounce back, and feels like the Yankees are really being vague about the news that gets out. Like, it doesn't sound good to me. Obviously, I'm not a doctor. We don't have all the information yet.
Right.
But man, if I'm a Yankees fan, I am really not feeling great right now. I'm okay with the lineup, but man, I'm like, man, our basically arguably our most valuable player on this whole roster might be lost for a long time. So yeah, you mentioned it. We'll obviously see what else news comes out. I don't want to speculate too much on it just yet, but man, this doesn't sound great in my opinion, and I'll leave it at that. And if we are without Garrett Cole for a while, let's just say, this really, I mean, I'm not going to say they have zero chance, but it's going to be a very uphill battle without a guy like that.
No doubt, man. Yeah, apparently the MRI showed no tear.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. I thought about Walker Buehler. This is what happened to him in 2022. I don't know if you remember this, but he had the same thing. He was having these really sore elbows after his starts, and they weren't getting better. He had a couple MRIs. They all said no tear, but he could not pitch and not feel pain. So they did an exploratory surgery on his elbow, and it showed that he needed Tommy John. So that's probably worst case for the Yankees right now. I don't want to speak it into existence, but this is tough for anybody who's drafted. I mean, obviously that's secondary, maybe tertiary. I mean, I guess who cares about fantasy baseball when we're talking about a man's livelihood? But anybody who's done their drafts at this point, I mean, that's tough. If you're thinking fantasy, I mean, where are you dropping this guy? If we think right now, he's coming back June 1st. Let's just put that pin that could very easily be moved in the calendar June 1st. This is a SP1, SP2. Let's just put him at like 12 ADP in the first round.
Yeah, I mean,
where are you dropping him?
I would say if news came out, somewhat soon, and we were pretty confident about him coming back in June, I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't say that it would drop him all that much, because that's, especially if you're in a head-to-head league, you're really only missing basically a month and a half of the season. Or maybe 2 months of the season. But, for me, that wouldn't drop him a whole lot just because he's so good. But if you're in a roto league, that changes it. But the problem is with these injuries, you don't know. Like, you don't know until he starts.
Yeah.
We'll obviously see if rest helps or it doesn't help. But I don't think we'll really know anything until he starts trying to ramp back up. And then if it starts barking again, then we're in real trouble. So,
no doubt.
To answer your question, though, knowing that it's probably what's going to happen, I mean, yeah, I have to believe he falls to, at minimum, the middle rounds. Like, and somebody just kind of take a huge risk-reward type swing at it, So that's kind of the way I see it. I think if June or July, whatever, is kind of the target date, so to speak, I think he's going to at least fall to the middle rounds and somebody just takes a massive swing at it, hoping for the best.
Yeah.
But knowing that there's a really good chance that they may be picking a guy that they literally get nothing from.
That's true. That reminds me of DeGrom a couple of years ago. I mean, I think they were talking July. And I think he fell to like the 5th round in our draft. And dude, nothing, never came back. Okay. This is another tough one, man. Cincinnati Reds received some unfortunate news on Friday as their top super prospect and, prospective starting third baseman Noelvi Marte suspended 80 games by Major League Baseball for a banned substance. He tested positive. He can come back, I believe, June 22nd. That's when the Reds play their 81st game. This is a tough story, man. This guy was supposed to be, something special in that stable of infielders. He was like the top dog. And now, I mean, this isn't like Tatis when he left. He's going to come back.
Right.
He might not have a spot. I mean, he hardly has a spot now. Pretty dang tough for a kid who, I mean, it was his job. It is no longer. What's this mean for Cincinnati, Will?
Well, I mean, if you're looking at the bright side, at least it kind of clears the deck as far as giving, as you mentioned, all the young guys, including Jonathan India, kind of a spot right now.
Yeah.
The bad news is, as you mentioned it, this guy he played with the Reds for about the past month or two of last season and was actually really good.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously he's been a big time prospect in their system for the last few years. So, missing a guy like that for 80 games, it's significant. Mm-hmm. At least the Reds are deep enough at the infield to where, it shouldn't really kill them too bad.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. Whenever I see PED suspension though, I have a hard time sympathizing too hard with the player. Because I have to believe that, they'll always plead ignorance most of the time, but man, you got to know what you're putting in your body. So
got to,
especially knowing all the rules and regulations surrounding all that stuff. So anyways, I don't think it's a huge deal just because the Reds are in such a good position in the infield, but you just hate to see it for the game just because this is kind of a super exciting young player, and now it just kind of puts a little bit of a wet cloth on it, so to speak.
Oh, for sure. I mean, people are going to look at him differently, and right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yep.
I mean, especially nowadays, you cannot. I mean, you just can't do it, because I guess back in the steroid era, I mean, everybody didn't do it. I don't want this to be like the point that's coming across here, but the rules were kind of coming into their own. And so now we're at a place where everybody knows the rules. Everybody knows you can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so for it to happen, I mean, now it's just, play dumb games, win dumb prizes kind of moment, I guess.
Yep.
I don't know, man. Okay, we'll do a little hit and run here, man. I want to put this together because, for crying out loud, I want to get into the players to target and players to avoid, Will. Okay, so Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery, they're just not going to pitch. I think they're just going to hang out for the rest of the year, okay? I don't know when these guys are signing. Maybe in like September for a playoff team. Okay. No, but seriously, they're not coming back. Brian Bello extended 6 years, $55 million for my Sox. Love that. Want to hear your thoughts. Joey Votto back in baseball, 40 years young, and playing for his hometown Toronto Blue Jays. And then Betts moving to shortstop. Lux is having issues throwing the ball across the diamond, so they're shifting him to second base. So when we walked into the offseason, Dave Roberts was saying, Mookie's going to be our second baseman. Now he switched that and said, hey, he's going to be our shortstop. What do you think about that? Because that feels like potentially, listen, there's not anything in this world I think Mookie can't do, but I do feel like it's a different ballgame when you're playing shortstop versus when you're playing second base. Anything out of those four, what strikes your fancy, Will?
I'll be quick. I would say good on the Red Sox for at least signing Bello to an extension. I mean, that's a guy who, has shown a lot of promise, at least so far. Don't get me started, and let's not get you started. They need to do much more than that, but at least they, made it a point to re-sign this guy. But
yeah,
as far as the other stuff, man, wouldn't it be nice to have a guy like Mookie Betts literally just stick him anywhere and just let him do his thing? I mean, you mentioned it. Yes, it is a bigger deal than what a lot of people lead it up to be, switching from second to short or vice versa. But as good as Mookie Betts is, man, I just feel like he's going to kind of make this look easy. I don't foresee this being an issue with Mookie Betts.
He's awesome.
With a lot of other players, I would say yes, it could be an issue. But with him, until he proves otherwise, I'm not really concerned about it.
Yep.
And then the other one, let's see, Joey Votto's back. Glad to see that. I hated that he didn't end his career with the Reds, but hey, the next best thing is him going back to Toronto in this case, which he's from Canada anyways. So that feels good. I hope he makes a return to the major leagues. And then what was the other one that you mentioned?
Well, just the fact that Blake Snell and Monty are not signed. It's kind of wild.
No, I'm with you. It feels like at this point it's stubbornness, not only from the players but also the agent, which is what, Scott Boras. Is that right?
Oh yeah.
I just don't see at this stage. I don't see the benefit to continuing to hold out for those two guys.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't see, unless a contending team like the Yankees has multiple injuries, like if, let's say Garrett Cole's out for a while, and then let's say something happened to somebody else in that rotation, and then the Yankees are like, oh my God, like we got to do something. That would be the only scenario to where I feel like a team with big enough pockets would be willing to maybe up their price a little bit to maybe meet their demand. But other than that, I just don't see how this is helping either of their causes at this stage.
Yeah, it's wild. I feel like it happened a couple of years ago with Keuchel and our main man Kimbrel. They after the draft, because there's no qualifying offer. And there it is, folks. If you listen to episode 71, that is the word I could not think of. The
qualifying offer.
That's it, baby. Back to my point. After the draft, doesn't matter if there's a qualifying offer or not. The draft's already over. And so then those guys signed like directly after that. But that would be absolutely wild. We're talking a different caliber of player just hanging out for the first couple of months. There's no world, man. There's no world to me where that happens, but we're going to keep an eye on it. And here's what I want everybody else to keep their eyes on, guys. We are diving in. Some players to target, some players to avoid. Like I said, we're going to look at 5 rounds at a time, ADP 1 through 60. You're diving in. You might be a little nervous. You got your water glass. You got maybe a snack. You don't get hungry mid-draft, Will. Who are you looking to take? Man. That needs to be in the strategy episode. What pregame snack? Keep your mind clear. That's the way to do it. All right, we're in the top 5 rounds. Okay, a lot of great players to pick. Who are you looking to target?
Man, it was hard to narrow down kind of this list to 1 or 2 for me, but I narrowed it down, and I narrowed it down to 2 guys that I feel really, really good about and really honestly kind of passionate about this year. And it's the 2 Phillies. It's Trey Turner and it's Bryce Harper. I'll go one by one here in just a second, but I just feel like both of these guys, like I mentioned earlier, there's always recency bias from year to year, especially in fantasy baseball. What have you done for me lately? And when someone looks at the numbers that both of these guys put up a year ago, they'll see the numbers and you compare it to some of the upper echelon guys and it doesn't quite compare. But then when you start pulling some of the layers back, it's like, okay, this happened. Then it starts to make more sense. And so, with Bryce Harper, let's start there. Bryce Harper, I mean, I feel pretty confident in saying I feel like Bryce Harper is a top 5 player in all of Major League Baseball, especially what he means to that team. And so from a fantasy perspective, though, I mean, I think he's still within his prime years. I think that, going back to last year, he was coming off a Tommy John surgery. And so he came back, he beat the odds. He probably came back I'm just going to say probably at least a month, probably quicker than he even should have.
Right.
And there's no way that he was 100%. There's no way that he was 100% confident in that injury, kind of its healing at that stage.
Mm-hmm.
And so his numbers kind of suffered a little bit based on Bryce Harper standards.
Yeah, power just wasn't there. Average was still there. He was hitting doubles, but yeah.
So, but like when you're accustomed to seeing a stat line for Bryce Harper, it just wasn't quite up to snuff. So, So anyways, if you watched any of the end of the year and into the playoffs, Bryce Harper looked like Bryce Harper again. And I say all that to say, Bryce Harper is going to be 100% healthy going into this year. And this is the 1 year in probably the past 5 to 10 years that you can get him in the third round maybe. And I would say take full advantage of it.
Yeah, probably late second, third round, early third for sure. But
late second or early third. But regardless, this is a end of the first round talent, if you ask me. And you're basically getting a round or round and a half discount, in my opinion. So he's number one. And then let's not forget, let's rewind the clock 1 year ago today. Trey Turner was the consensus number one overall pick in fantasy baseball last year. Granted, that was before Ronald Acuna had an unbelievable season and several other guys really stepped up. But just 1 year ago, Trey Turner was the number one overall consensus guy. He had a rough first half of the year last year, making the transition to Philadelphia. But guess what? He started finding his stride towards the second half. And I think that's going to carry forward into this year. And he is now kind of early second round in most drafts if you're in a 12-team league. And man, take advantage of that. This is a guy who's been a top 5 player for the last several years. And I feel like you're basically getting at least a half round discount on it this year. So both of those Phillies guys, I think if you get one or both of those guys in that area they're going in right now, I think you're going to be pretty happy.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I think it's a great call. I'm starting to see a little correlation here between these two and your World Series selection from last episode. I mean, that's starting to make a lot of sense. I think Will's putting some coin on the Phillies. No, dude, I like it. I think it's a great cause. And you're right. I mean, these are two guys, when you look at next year, if everything goes right, they could definitely be top 12 picks, first round for sure. Okay, my guy, I talked about him a little bit last episode. Pablo Lopez, man. This guy, ADP of 39, so you're in the top of the third round. He's been my perfect SP1 on a ton of my teams after going hitter in the first two. Dude had a great year, had 234 strikeouts, 194 innings pitched. I think this was your dark horse Cy Young pick.
He is.
Yeah, dude. I love him. I think he's a stud. We saw glimpses in Miami. Obviously got traded for Luis Arraez. Talk about a deal that worked out for both sides.
Win-win.
No doubt. I'm on the Lopez train, and he's healthy right now, which is very exciting. So, we'll take it. Still got 2 weeks to cross our fingers and toes. But yeah, he's my guy. ADP 39. You can get him on a team coming to you. Number 39, Will. Okay, bud. Here we go.
Hey,
now,
I really like Lopez a lot too. He reminds me of, to be honest with you, he reminds me a lot of Kevin Gausman. And Kevin Gausman, man, he has been fantasy gold the past few years, and I think Lopez is very similar.
Well, he couples the innings pitched, like he's going to get you 180, 190 innings guaranteed. He couples it with a Ks per nine over 9, and it's just the longevity of that over a season, even week to week. It is just it's a luxury, man. You're gonna have to pay up for it, but somebody to target for sure. Some guys to avoid. Will, take it away.
Oh man, there were definitely several that I thought about here, and to be honest with you, this one kind of pains me a little bit. But man, this guy going somewhere give or take around 25, 26 right now, which is, essentially, let's just say into the second round or early third round in most drafts. Luis Robert, man, I've talked about on the show several times how much I love the talent. I mean, I think he's easily a top 5, top 10 talent in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But there are issues. Number one, he plays on a really bad team. The White Sox, I think, are just an absolute disaster of a franchise right now, and that doesn't do him any favors.
Yeah.
Number two, I know he has a pretty long injury history for being a fairly young guy still. And so I don't love that. You know, anytime you're investing a premium high pick, man, you want guys that you know are going to be on the field, barring anything freaky.
Yeah.
And with somebody like Luis Robert, you do not know that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another issue for me. And then the other issue for me is, man, I don't know if there is honestly a more streaky guy other than maybe Kyle Schwarber in all of Major League Baseball. I mean, there will literally be a stretch of 3, 4, 5 games to where Luis Robert will strike out 80% of the time that he comes up to bat. Mm-hmm. And then there will be other times where there will be 4 or 5 days in a row that he'll hit a home run. So, you know, I guess you could say it balances out. But, man, I just, again, for a guy that I'm picking in the late second or early third, man, I want a guy who I know every time I set my lineup, I'm going to get a very good chance of a guy putting up a great stat line. And with somebody like Robert, I just don't know that. And so as much as I love the talent, I don't love how high he's going this year in the draft, especially considering the team he's on. And so that's why I say avoid him.
Yeah. No, we talked about it, man. The underlying numbers, a little scary. I mean, they landed in a great place, just counting stats wise, but the strikeout rate is really high and the walk rate's really low.
Yeah.
And then couple that with the fact that every time he's still second, you're nervous.
Hold your breath.
You're like, please stand up.
Yeah.
So speaking of standing up, I got to stand up real quick and just raise my hand and say, ADP of 39 is the beginning of the 4th round. Okay, this is not a math pod. I know I said beginning of the 3rd round. But 36 divided by 12 is 3. So I apologize for anybody listening and they're like busting out their calculator like, oh, son of a gun, I just did my taxes and I'm so bad at math. What is happening? No, that's Cody. That's Cody just coding up the math, man. Going back to some math, I do know 24 divided by 12, that's 2. So you're in the 2nd round now, Will. Late 2nd round, ADP of 24, Elly De La Cruz. I'm willing to be wrong on this guy. I understand. And we're seeing a little bit of O'Neal Cruz coming back with the shots that he's got 5 spring training home runs. And I put these guys in the same bucket. They're StatCast darlings. They hit the ball harder than anybody. They throw the ball harder than anybody. The strikeout rate makes me so nervous. I understand they are super duper tall, super duper. They're fun to. I mean, they're just must see TV. Fun to watch. They're electric on the diamond, but for where they're going in these drafts, we talk about all the time, the value, man, it is so much risk for where you're going when there's guys on the board who have done it more consistently going past these guys. Like even a Lindor, man, that's a guy who the last couple of years, no holes in his game, average 250. Okay. That's not great, but he's going to get you 30 bombs and 30 steals and 100 RBIs. This guy could steal 60. He could hit 40. Yeah. I don't know. Elly De La Cruz, I'm ready to be wrong. And when I'm wrong, he's going to be going in the 1st round.
Oh, yeah.
I'll pay up for that if I'm wrong. But for right now, when we haven't seen it, it makes me nervous, and I'm out on Elly. I got him on one team. I got him on my FOMO team. That's okay. But if that team tanks, it is a points league, and he strikes out an awful lot for that. But he fell, and I grabbed him. Will, anything on Elly?
Oh, man. He's a tough one for me. I'm not going to say that he's like a guy that I just won't get just because I do love the talent, but I'm with you. Like some of the underlying stuff really scares me, especially the strikeout rate. But here's the thing. There's certain guys when you watch them play, and this is very rare, but there's certain guys that you watch them play and it's like, I could totally see this guy being the best fantasy ball player in the whole league. Like the number 1 fantasy baseball player one day. Like you can feasibly see that if you watch him play. And so knowing that, it makes it tough to kind of put him on an avoid list like that. But I'm with you. Like the floor is literally so low
Yeah.
that it more often than not, it would scare me off at his current asking price in the draft. So I'm with you. But if he fell far enough, like, man, what gets me is the stolen bases, because even if the average is really low,
yeah,
like, he will be a complete outlier in the stolen bases, especially at third base. And so that's kind of the saving grace for me. I view him very similarly as how I viewed Bobby Witt a year or two ago. Like, I didn't think the bat was quite ready, to justify the ADP, but I know the speed is going to be ready. And so that's really the only thing that kind of sort of keeps it afloat for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Nope. I think you're right, man. I mean, he's 35 bases in 98 games. That's pretty dang solid. And that's when your average is 235. So if you get on base a little bit more, I mean, he's not walking. So average is pretty much what you get. If he will, though. That's the thing. And I understand we're not talking about 3 years in the future.
Right.
He will tighten it up. Everybody does this. Bobby Witt struck out a ton, still does. But the more they see big league pitching, I don't think it's going to be a problem. Take him with the second overall pick in Dynasty for all I care. I don't. But just for redraft, he's off my board at ADP of 24. Hey, we're moving on in the draft. We're at round 6 through 10. You got your clay, man. You got an idea of what you want to do with your team. If you're anything like the draft we did last week, you got like 2 hitters and 3 pitchers. Okay. Will, who you looking to grab, buddy?
Oh man, can you hear that noise in the background? It sounds kind of like trumpets to me.
I do hear the trumpets. That's wonderful.
Coming from New York, Edwin Diaz, baby, he is back. I'm excited. I think Edwin Diaz is, honestly, I know he's a closer and you only get to see him for, an inning and every other game, but he is honestly one of the most exciting baseball players in the whole league to me. I have very rarely seen electric stuff as good as his. And I'm just excited he's back. And this is a guy that I feel like when he is on, I think he and Felix Bautista, who's out this year for the Orioles, I think they are, bar none, the best 2 closers in all of Major League Baseball. Honorable mention, shout out to Devin Williams. But I just think that Edwin Diaz is amazing. And so having said that, I think this is the one year you're going to be able to get a slight discount on him. I think it's the best closer in baseball. He is not coming off an elbow or a shoulder or an arm injury. He is coming off of a knee injury. And yes, that is significant, but it's not his pitching arm. And so I do think it might take him a couple of starts to really get back into the groove. But man, all I'm trying to say is I think this is the year to take advantage of the 2-round discount that you're getting as a result of him coming off the injury and enjoy the ride.
Yep. He's a stud, man. He struck out the side. I think today or yesterday. He's nasty. He's nasty, and he's back, and that's exciting. I went with Xander Bogaerts. And I know what you're thinking. This is a Red Sox homer pick. I guess that's fair. But if you don't want to spend your draft capital in the first 5 rounds, okay, on a Bichette or a Lindor or Ellie De La Cruz or Bobby Witt in the first round, if you want to wait on shortstop, this is your perfect guy, okay? He's on the left coast, and nobody knows what he's doing over there. People still think he plays in Boston. This is why he's falling so low. ADP 107, okay?
Yeah.
People are tuning out. They're looking on their phones. They're flipping through their TikToks and their Instagrams. Okay, they're not even paying attention, and you're going to steal Xander Bogaerts. Let me tell you what you're stealing. You're stealing a guy who had a terrible first half last year, okay? Let's talk about it. Let's get out on the table. Second half, dude was nasty, okay? How about this after August 1st, Will? 322 batting average, 8 home runs, 8 steals, 14 doubles. People are forgetting that this man is an extra. Yes, it's pretty good. That's more doubles than I've had my entire life. Okay. Will see me hit off a tee. I haven't hit very many doubles. Let me tell you something, guys. In all caps, buy the dip on this guy, okay? He was 19-19 last year, and he had a terrible year. This guy is a lock for 2020, and I would not be surprised. He's going to have to step up. He's a leader. He's done it before in Boston. Soto's gone. If this team's gonna go anywhere, it's gonna be on the back of this guy and Manny Machado waking up. I'd love to see Nando. I'd love to see Fernando do something. But as far as leaders go, it's gonna be Xander, okay? And it's time to step up. This dude's a stud. I'm telling you, this is like my play for shortstop in leagues, okay? Tell me about your favorite shortstop, Xander Bogaerts.
I mean, I definitely have favorites out there more so than Xander, but
no, you don't. No, you don't, Will.
But I definitely get what you're saying. I can't argue with those last couple of months he had last year. That was really, really good stuff. I think for me, when I think about Xander Bogaerts, I think about a steady veteran guy. I know what I'm getting, which is valuable. I think for me is, can he sustain the stolen bases? Because I feel pretty confident that the average is going to be very playable. I feel like, there's going to be, he's not going to lead the, position in home runs by any stretch, but he's going to give you some power. But for me, is the stolen base is going to be there, because I think that's what, for me, if you're picking him, let's say in the 8th, 9th, 10th round, wherever it is, and you get 5 to 10 stolen bases, then I don't know, you're probably just getting a guy that's really helping you in maybe 2 categories. But if he can get his steals up somewhere close to 20 or more, now we're talking about a guy who you can get in the 8th, 9th, 10th round, who can then return 4th, 5th round value, and that's when we're cooking. So for me, are the stolen bases going to be there? That's the major question for me. And if they are, I absolutely love the pick.
We're going to move on here in a second, but you want to talk about reminiscent as a Sox fan. 2019, this guy had 33 home runs, 117 RBIs, and we won 84 games that year. What are we doing? What are we doing, Will? We let Mookie walk out the door. Okay, moving on, buddy. We want to avoid this topic of conversation with me. Tell me who you want to avoid in round 6 or 10.
Oh, man, there were a bunch of these guys, I'll be honest. And so I was having a hard time, picking one.
I appreciate your honesty.
Yes. But here's the thing. I'm going to go with a little bit of surprise here. I'm going to say Blake Snell. Let me start by saying this. I don't like the fact that he's holding out. We talked about that kind of the top of the show. This doesn't feel right to me. Obviously he's not going to be ready to go by opening day. I think we all know that right now. So the time is basically ticking away right now. How much, if he's signed tomorrow, which is highly unlikely at this point, how much time is he literally going to have to miss? How many starts is he going to miss? So that's number one. And then let's go to last year. He had, other than the Cy Young year in Tampa, this was by far his best year if you take that 1 year in Tampa away. And so, are we looking at kind of a 2-hit wonder here? This was the contract year last year, so was he all in? I think it's fair to ask those questions. And so it would be different for me if he was year in, year out, if he was like a Zach Wheeler to where, he puts up basically the same stat line every year. It would be a totally different conversation, but guess what? It's not with him. And then, we've talked about this numerous times. We talked about how the walks are always an issue, but he's got such good stuff that he can usually overcome it. Well, at some point, those walks are going to get you. And so I just feel like, if I can sum it up, number one, I don't like the fact that he's not signed. So who knows what teams he's going to sign with. And then number two, I just do not expect him to repeat what happened last year, regardless of when and where he signs. And so for all of those reasons, him still going in the 6th, 7th round, that just feels too high to me right now. And so I'm avoiding Blake Snell.
Yeah. Yeah, for some people it's a reason to go after him, but I'm with you, man. Dude, it was like 100 percentile outcome for him last year, and I don't
Yep.
know that we're gonna get that again. Yeah, I love your call. We're gonna have to bump, so I'm gonna keep rolling here. Jazz Chisholm is mine at ADT of 72. This is another guy, man. I feel like
Yeah.
I'm just not buying the hype train players. But this is like a post hype guy because we've been hype about him. He's been on a video game, but he has not performed to that point. I'm ready to be proven wrong with him. The
Yeah.
deal is he strikes out too much. He can't stay healthy. When he's on the
Mhm.
field, we always talk about 2020 guys, 2025. This dude has power and he's going to steal bases. He's fast and he's got a lot of pop. But everything else is pretty tough for where he's going. Now, you have to couple that with the fact that the tiers in outfield are pretty short. Okay, so he's not going to go in that top tier. He's in the second tier, and so maybe that's why he's going so early. Is he's kind of like mid second tier, and that's just where he's falling in these drafts. But I have just not found myself able to pull the trigger on this guy just because, especially in category leagues like we play in, average is important. On base percentage important. You cannot be striking out. We in our home league we have strikeouts as a category. You cannot have too many, or you can't have. Well, you can have too many, I guess, but you don't want a bunch of Jazz Chisholms, Kyle Schwarbers, people who they got a lot of pop. They'll hit you 40 homers, but they'll strike out 200 times. It will crush you in that category week over week, and so. It's a tough sell for me, and that's why he's on my avoid list.
I'm with you. He's got to stay on the field. He has got to play one season to where he's fully healthy, and that's yet to happen.
He might hit 40 home runs and steal 40 bases, but dude, for whatever reason, I've watched a lot of Marlins games.
Mm-hmm.
I know not why. It's just like when I'm available to watch it, and that's the game that's on. I've seen him strike out quite a bit in the spring. He's just a wild swinger. Nothing, no two ways about it. Hey, let's move on. Rounds 11 through 15. Okay, now we're really getting into, you're filling out the rest of your lineup. Now we might be getting into those corner infield, middle infield spots. Who you going after, Will?
Yeah, man. There's a lot of guys in this part of the draft that, for me are very intriguing. Mm-hmm. But for me, there's one guy that really kind of stood out, and that's Christian Encarnacion Strand for the Reds. I'm usually one to where I want to see it for a year or so before I believe it. But I tell you what, there's a lot of things going for this guy. Obviously, we've seen all the minor league stats. The minor league stats are impressive. Mm-hmm. The power plays from day one at the major league level. But what makes him different is it feels like there's going to be, I'm not saying he's going to hit 310, mm-hmm. but it feels like he's got potential to hit for a solid average as well. And what I mean by that is, I don't think it's out of the question for him to hit 270, maybe 280.
Yeah.
And if he puts up the kind of power numbers that we think he can, I mean, this guy's got some serious potential, especially from a fantasy perspective. So, I really like him as far as where he's going, average draft position. Yeah. I think there's definitely a lot of value there and upside. He gets to play half of his games in Great American, which is always nice too. Yep. So, and plus we mentioned it earlier, Marte getting suspended. Feels like this kind of clears up any doubts of playing time with Encarnacion Strand. So, I'm a believer. I like his current draft price, and so take a shot on him.
I think it's a great call, man. He's the perfect. I think we talked about the mock draft episode. He's the perfect corner infield guy. I mean, he's awesome, all upside, and I love it. Dude, it's funny. You went young first baseman. I'll go young first baseman.
Yeah.
Give me Josh Naylor. The dude is a stud. You don't think about him because he plays in Cleveland.
Yeah.
And what do we know about Cleveland? They changed their name a couple years ago. They're all pitching. They have one good hitter. Psych, they have two good hitters because Josh Naylor exists, and he had a banger of a year in 2023. How about a 301 average, 17 home runs, and 97 RBIs out of your first base? He stole 10 bases.
Yeah.
He's Freddie Freeman light. I'm just kidding. He's like real Freddie Freeman light. No, but I actually still think there's room for improvement with this kid. And yeah, dude, he's just a great hitter. He's going to give you great production, and he's going late in the draft, man. ADP 132. So lots to like there with Naylor. Anything on him before we move on?
No, I like it. I like everything you said about him. He's going to hit cleanup pretty much every day for him. And so as long as he can get a little bit of production in front of him, but behind him, yeah, I'm with you. I really like his game. And let's see if the average can stay around that 300 mark. I'm not sure. I don't know yet if that's sustainable or not.
Yeah.
But if it is, then absolutely. This is great value for a guy like that.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of things that we're unsure of, my eyes wander down the sheet sometimes, Will, and I just look down to your avoid pick.
Yeah.
I wonder what you're thinking, man. Will you enlighten me, please?
All right. So here we go. So
He's like,
again, in this section of so keep in mind this is right in the heart of the draft, right? We're, rounds basically 11 through 15. So in most leagues this is right in the middle. There just so happens that there's a first ballot Hall of Famer in there, and I was like, man, I don't like it. And it's Justin Verlander.
Oh,
yeah, it's Justin
JV.
Verlander. Here's my thing, man. I when pitchers start getting the injury bug, for me it's time to bail.
Yeah.
Especially on pitchers when they are up there in age. And I don't care. Here's the thing in fantasy baseball too, is you have got to understand that years previous, yes, we put that in the memory bank and we use that to kind of project what we're going to see over the next year or so.
Yeah.
But those years are irrelevant to this year, basically, right?
Very true. Very true.
You can't just automatically think, oh, well, he did it last year, so he's going to do it again this year. That's not true. And so what I'm trying to say is I don't care if you separate the name here of Justin Verlander and you purely look at a guy who is over 40 years old now. He's had nagging injuries the past year or two. He's already got an injury to the shoulder, his throwing shoulder this year. The stuff last year, his numbers were fine, but they weren't quite to his normal standards. But if you watched him pitch, he labored through more starts last year. Because I watched the Astros play a lot because they're on a lot. They're a really good team.
Sure.
And Justin Verlander labored through a lot more starts last year than I can ever remember him doing previously. And so I just feel like as much as we don't ever want to see this out of the game's greats, and trust me, he is one of the absolute greats of this generation.
Yeah.
But I am out going on to this year. Man, when guys get to a certain age and they're getting injured, usually things don't turn out the way that you really want them to as much as you want them to. And so that's what I'm seeing with a case like this.
Yep. Well, I hate to hear it. Will. There's the underlying numbers support exactly what you're saying. His Ks per nine were down from 2022. Now 2022, I don't know if you remember this, won the Cy freaking young. Okay, so dude's a stud. He's coming into his 41-year-old season. I can think of a couple other 41-year-old athletes that did incredible things for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers before retiring. Oh, it's getting late. We're all the way off the rails now, team. No, you're right. I don't think there's anything wrong with avoiding him. I'm actually buying the dip. He's not obviously my SP1, but to have him as like a potential like SP4 or 5 and for him to come back, and if he is even a semblance of himself, I mean, I don't think he's been out that long. I could be wrong, but he's a guy that of the people who are hurt, like of the Bradishes and of the Sengas, he's the guy that I feel like probably best out of taking just because those other two were pretty uncertain. Now, I saw that Bradish threw a bullpen today, all fastballs, and looked okay. I don't know how it felt, but it looked good. So we'll see what happens, but I hear what you're saying. My guy to avoid, dude, there's a trend that I'm running into. Unproven young people. Anthony Volpe, man. Listen, and I understand the fantasy reasoning for wanting to take this guy. If you're taking him now, he's not he might be your starting shortstop. I actually don't know kind of what your game plan is, but ADP 132, same as Naylor. So I think that's a pretty good contrast. If I would rather have this young guy than Volpe. Listen, the kid's got all the intangibles to do great things. He's got a flat now. He's got the biggest hole in his swing. Very akin to like a Joey Gallo. I mean, he's got the biggest dip in his swing. Someone taught him to swing for power. He's a little guy, and he might, if he can get on base more than, he had a 209 batting average. He'll take a walk. That's always, he's had a good eye, but he strikes out quite a bit, right at 30%. I think it's like 29. So this is a guy who right now, I feel like when I talk about him, I'm talking about Spencer Torkelson in 2021. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's solid. If it's the Dynasty League, it's obviously a different story. But right now, he's not going to help you in a redraft league, in my opinion. I could be wrong. And I think the steals are nice, but everybody steals nowadays. I mean, you're running at a pizza box size base. So, for that reason, I'd probably be out this year on Volpe. Now, I might be all the way in. I might be leading the fan club next year, Will. Anything before we move on to our last set of guys?
Yeah, no, I'm with you for the most part. I think the only thing that gives me some optimism with a guy like Volpe is the fact, and you alluded to this, is the fact that he'll take walks.
Mm-hmm.
Usually guys that are young hitters that understand the strike zone enough to be able to get their walk rate to a fairly average or above average level, usually that means there's potential for them to quickly turn around, potentially either a hole in the swing or just missing pitches or whatever the case may be to elevate the strikeout rate. So that alone gives me a little bit of hope, but I'm kind of with you. I want to see it first with a guy like that.
I think that's all we're saying.
I want to see it first. I think eventually Volpe is going to be really good. I just don't know if it's going to quite happen this year or if it's going to be a year or two from now. But I wouldn't be shocked if he had a solid season this year and then really started taking off maybe next year or the year after.
Yeah. Oh, I'm with you, dude. Like I said, I think this is a guy who, they put a lot on him last year. Okay. And that's something that if you're drafting him, you got to think about. He's got another year in those cleats, another opportunity. The leash is going to be long with this kid, but like I said, it's just tough for me to have him as my starting shortstop. I think.
For sure.
But where he's going, it's tough to draft him as a backup because you're still filling out a lineup at that point. So I'm really out of him I'm really out on him. Here we go, Will. We're gonna get this baby. Out on him at 132. If it's at like 160 or 180, totally different story.
Yeah.
Because of the upside. Okay. Rounds 16 through 20. Okay. You're ironing out your bench. You might be looking at some high upside minor league guys, a Paul Skeens, perhaps who else? Who just got sent down for help me with the name for your main man, the Tampa Bay Rays?
Oh, Junior Caminero.
He sure did go down. I sure drafted him last week. And
he won't be down for too long.
That's what I'm saying. Okay, buddy. Who are you looking to grab?
Yeah, so I love this part of the draft. I think you go back and, if you've been doing this a while, like you go back and look at kind of the draft and look at the last few rounds and you're like, oh man, that was a great pick. And I don't know, like I kind of learned to take pride in that, like just really loving trying to find those late round picks that really help your team. They don't have to be superstars, but if you get a frontline starter or a high end guy that just emerges or that it really outperforms their draft position, like that's big.
Yeah.
In a competitive league. So anyways, one of the guys that stood out to me is a guy who's been around for a really long time now, but all he does is hit. And that's Justin Turner.
Famed Red Sox.
Yeah, and, I just got done talking about Justin Verlander and kind of the age thing, but, it's a little bit different for a pitcher versus a hitter. With a hitter, especially if a hitter is a primary DH now, which Justin Turner is, you're talking about a totally different like wear and tear type on the body. So age for a hitter doesn't scare me near as much as it does with a pitcher. Yeah. And so with Justin Turner, you look at, for the last decade. I
Yeah.
mean, this guy has stacked together solid year after solid year after solid year. All he does is just continue to hit.
Mm-hmm.
He's still going to be in a really productive lineup with the Blue Jays, and we think that lineup's probably going to hopefully be a little bit better than it was a year ago with some of those guys bouncing back. But regardless, Justin Turner's going to play almost every day. He's going to be DHing a lot of days. He's going to be hitting probably fifth, I'm guessing, in that lineup in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And also, he's got multiple eligibility positions. He's going to be eligible in most formats at first, third, and probably second. So, for a late round guy to get a guy with such a high floor, I think there's a lot of value there in Justin Turner. So that's going to be my my guy to go get in those latter rounds.
Yeah. Hey, one other thing that I don't think you mentioned, man, for fantasy, he's at least in Yahoo, first, second, and third base eligible. So he's going to DH for the Jays for sure, but you can put him freaking anywhere. It's really nice. I love it, man. He had a great year in Boston, and he was a stud. Yeah, he's the man. Oddly enough, you went older, gentleman. I went a little bit younger, man. At ADP of 200, you can get Edward Julian from the Twins, ADP 200. This dude is a stud, okay? He's got a great eye. Strikes out a little bit. We've been talking about this. Young people strike out, okay? It's like a whole life thing, man, okay? We do too, okay? We're young. We make choices. It doesn't work out. You grab your bat. You go back. You practice. You hit a home run the next time, Will, okay? This dude is it's his job now at second base. They got rid of Jorge Polanco, and they're going to let this kid eat no reins. And I think that's going to be really good for us in fantasy, especially where he's going in drafts so late. I'm not saying wait at second base, but shoot. Middle infield spot or backup second baseman, pretty dang sweet. I love this guy, Will. Anything on him before we move on?
No, I agree. Let's see how he does with basically full reign on playing time. And I'm with you. I like what I've seen so far, kind of limited sample size. But for sure, if he's your backup second baseman, like, I'm all for it.
I love it, dude. Hey, players to avoid. Do want to say, I think I said this last year. At this point in the draft, I think it's why it's so much fun. It's free and easy, man. There's like literally no downside. You can drop any of these people when you get to the 200s or 240 range, whatever we're talking about here. So there's really no one you want to avoid. So I guess it's just like people we really don't like. Take it away.
I second everything you just said. And one reason why I kind of picked this guy is because I feel like in a lot of drafts out there, he's going to probably still get picked, maybe even a little bit higher than what we maybe think he will, just because of name recognition. And that's Max Scherzer. And basically, I kind of second everything I was talking about with Justin Verlander, just to a more critical level here.
I'm with you.
I think Max Scherzer has really shown now that I'm comparing kind of Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer, I feel like Max Scherzer over the past really year, maybe even 2 years, there's been a much sharper decline, at least in my opinion. Even when we compare him to Justin Verlander, because you mentioned Justin Verlander won the Cy Young 2 years ago. And Max, even though he still had good year that year, you could tell towards the end of that year he had some kind of an injury and he was not the same. And then last year it was kind of more the same. It was nagging injury after nagging injury. And even when he was quote unquote healthy, kind of like what I was saying with Verlander, I've never seen Max Scherzer struggle through so many starts. And so when I start seeing that, as much as you want to think about how amazing these guys were 5-10 years ago in their prime, they're just not those guys anymore. And we have to be able to separate the name, with the production level now. And so that's kind of all I'm trying to say with these two guys. And so, Phil, I get it if somebody takes a flyer in the late rounds on a guy like Max Scherzer. I really do, but it won't be me. Like, I've seen this play out before with these aging guys that start getting injured, and usually 99% of the time, it does not get any better from here.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, in redraft, it's hard to. I don't know. It's hard to draft this guy. I think you maybe give it a little bit. They're looking at June. Okay, it's a back thing. The crazy thing is the numbers didn't suck. Like strikeout rate 10.3. I mean,
Yeah.
he's but his body just won't let him do it, man.
Mm-mm.
He had a pretty solid year. Got injured in 22 though with the Mets. He had 145 innings, struck out 173 guys. I mean, freaking solid, dude. But he just can't stay healthy. 2.29.
But he's also throwing in more starts now to where he gets pounded. Like there's some starts to where he still looks good. It's like he feels really good today, and so he goes out there and does kind of his thing. Yeah. But then the next start, he gets out there and just gets pounded, and it's just honestly kind of painful to watch. So I just
biggest jump from 22. He gave up 0.8 home runs per 9. He gave up 1.7. So essentially doubled the amount of home runs he was getting. Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right on. And I'm with you. It's really hard to pull the trigger on a guy like that. My guy, last guy we'll talk about, MJ Melendez, man. And this is a dude you'll see. He'll get drafted. And I mean, listen, the dude hits the ball really hard, but the underlying stuff isn't there. He'll walk. He's about league average at walking. Strikes out a ton. His biggest thing is I don't know. They have prospects. I think Kansas City likes more than this guy. They gave him a shot behind the dish. Didn't pan out there. Put him in right field. Now they got outfielder. Drew Waters came over from the Braves. They're interested in him, and then they have Freddie Fermin, a catching prospect who they're looking to give the reins over when Salvi's done, which I think they're going to start kind of moving him to more DH. So now I don't know where he's going to go, but he's still a name. You still hear him. He has prospect pedigree, and people are still drafting him. I don't see it. I don't see the lane. Maybe if he gets traded, I could see him. I don't know what they'd move him for. I don't know. But they're not really a team looking to buy at the deadline. But for right now, he just kind of feels like he might be. I don't know. I'm just not in on him. I could be wrong. Anything on MJ?
I think the only saving grace for me is I've still noticed that he's got some catcher eligibility, even though he kind of primarily plays in the outfield. So, if he's kind of the backup catcher, if you've got a guy that you feel good about at that position, and then you just want to take a flyer on a guy like that, just hoping that he figures it out, I don't necessarily have a problem with it. But overall, I'm with you. Like at this point, if the light hadn't turned on, like chances are that the light bulb might be dead. And so, I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, the guys like Jared Kelenic, they're kind of rare because nowadays, like with how good young baseball development has become, if guys that have those big time minor league pedigrees, if they don't show something in those first couple of years, it's like, he might not have it, Whereas used to, you'd give them 3, 4, 5 years, and it's like, we might have something now. But now, if it's been 2 or 3 years and they're still not really progressing the way that you think they should, then you're right. Teams are going to start moving off of guys. And so I'm with you. I'd love to see him figure it out because the power is impressive.
Yeah.
But he just strikes out too much. I don't know. I can't really put my finger on it either. But I just know one thing. He better start producing, or you're right. Those other guys are going to take the reins.
Yeah. It's almost like he got passed by. Like he was the one who was supposed to lead this youth movement.
Yeah.
He was up before Bobby Witt or for any of these guys. And it just kind of didn't happen. And then Bobby Witt came, and it was like, bada bing, bada boom. This is the dude. Let's extend him. And he's a Royal for life. And now, so I got a few more years of team control, but you want stuff to work out for these guys. But I just don't know that I see it. And I won't be drafted them. Man, Will, what a list. We made it through. That's like an hour and 10 minutes. Guys, if you're listening right now, we really appreciate you. Let us know, man. Leave us a review or leave us a comment. Let us know that you're listening. And so that we know that our I love you is received, because that's what we certainly do. Otherwise, I'm just telling Will I love him, and he knows that. He knows that. We do that plenty of time off the show, so he understands. Dude, before we head on out of here, anything to tell the peeps?
Man, just like what I said at the top of the show, man, baseball season, regular season baseball is almost here with Padres Dodgers next week.
7 days.
Got the 7-day countdown going. So I'm excited. I know we're both excited. Fantasy season drafts are happening. Mm-hmm. But yeah, man, I'm looking forward to season getting going, and these next few episodes as we lead into the regular season are going to be a lot of fun.
Gonna be great. Looking forward to Wednesday, waking up, driving over to Will's house, waking him up.
Right.
The kiddo. Just wake everybody up. It's gonna be great. Oh man, who thought it would be a good idea to have some 5 a.m. baseball? We did. Okay. Right. Well, hey guys, we really appreciate you. Like I said, let us know what you think of these lists. Let us know if there's some guys that you're like, maybe you're wrong on MJ Melendez, Cody. Maybe I believe he'll turn around. Or tell Will how wrong he is about Justin Verlander. I'd really love to see that. No, I'm kidding. But hey, we really appreciate you guys. But until next time, thanks for listening to episode 72 of Bringing the Heat.